Hi everyone, have another little update for you guys in regards to the world of cryptocurrency and the never-ending amount of drama. Clubhouse is the new favorite chat app that people seem to have online where you can have voice chats with other people. And there's a number of different Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and other groups on there. One of the more popular ones is, I think, called Swan Club or Bitcoin Clubhouse or something like that. And a few days ago, Dotcom, the founder of Mega Upload and famous internet entrepreneur, was in that chat room, and the chat room had been going for 2.5 hours already at this point. And it's mainly run by Bitcoin maximalist types, but some of these Bitcoin maximalist types decided, okay, let's have a conversation with Kim.com. And then they had a really interesting conversation, went on for over an hour. And then that was the end of it. Some of the Bitcoin maximalists didn't like what he had to say, but a couple of them in there were like, well, let's hear what he has to say, that's fine. And the whole video recording, or the chat recording of it, wound up being like 3.5 hours. And so they put the entire thing on YouTube, and you could see all 3.5 hours of it on YouTube there on the Swan Bitcoin YouTube channel there. And what happened is people really started focusing on the things that Kim.com had to say in the final hour of that video. And apparently people thought he really made a lot of sense and made a lot of really good points. And lo and behold, when people started listening to it and getting attention, these same people that engaged in all the censorship and propaganda to attack Bitcoin being able to scale to be money for the world, rather than just letting the arguments stand for themselves or let people hear what Kim has to say or think about this, who's clearly has a track record of being one of the the true visionaries of the internet. He came up with the whole idea for cloud computing before it was called cloud computing. So anyhow, what did they do? Rather than just let people hear the arguments and decide for themselves, they literally edited an existing video on YouTube that had already had lots of people watching it, and they deleted the entire portion of that video that had Kim.com making his Bitcoin Cash arguments in the video. They literally deleted the portion of the video from an existing YouTube video. That's how much censorship these guys support. But luckily for you and everybody else in the world, for the most part, the internet never forgets. And so somebody managed to grab the whole video there and have it downloaded before they managed to censor it off the internet once they realized people were actually listening to their arguments, because their arguments don't make any sense. That's why they have to have censorship to support their arguments, because if the arguments were strong on their own, they wouldn't be needing to resort to censorship. So anyhow, for your viewing pleasure, we've uploaded the entire, it's a little over an hour long session with Kim.com and these Bitcoin maximalists talking about, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and cryptocurrency. And I think it's a very informative conversation for anybody, no matter what side of the scaling debate you come down on. It's worth having a listen to. And it's also worth noting that the Bitcoin Cash people over and over and over consistently support free speech and free flow of ideas. And the Bitcoin Core people, or the 1 megabyte small block people, consistently do everything they can to silence any sort of voice that has an opinion that's different from their own, including deleting or editing out existing portions of YouTube videos that were already online for the whole world to view. What a crazy, crazy world. So anyhow, for your viewing pleasure, here are a bunch of Bitcoin maximalists and Kim.com. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you like this video and appreciate the fact that it wasn't censored off the entire internet, share this video with a friend and send your friends some Bitcoin Cash and show them how real peer-to-peer cash for the world works. So enjoy the video. See you next time.
And I don't think it's wise to come into this. We're kind of like, this is the hornet's nest now. It's not really the debate plan.
We've got Kim.com in here. Should we try and rescue him from his world of shit?
Well, that's a whole different conversation, isn't it?
Let's rescue Kim.
Look, if you're letting Kim.com on, you should let Eric on, I think.
Yeah, Eric should come back up, but Kim.com should come up too. But like, me and JC had lots of conversations with Kim.com, like 2 conversations with him on here already, and he still says the same things.
Can they debate
the same things?
Can they debate against each other?
I was so excited for Kim
great.
and his project, and then he got into Bitcoin Cash.
Let's bring up both of them and make them debate BCH versus ETH.
Is he in the room right now, or are you talking about another later future event?
No, he's here.
Kim would come. Kim, I mean, I was thinking comes. He's pretty open and willing to talk.
Hey, do you mind if I ask?
Imagine bag holding BCH in 2021.
Less than 1% of
Kim's.
Oh, he claims he doesn't have any. He says he doesn't
Hey,
have
guys,
any.
you
All
can clear
right,
the stage
Kim's
for
on the
Kim.
stage. Hold on a second, real quick. I just want to let everyone know, Kim.com on the stage. Been a big figure in the tech space for a very, very long time. Just want to introduce you to the stage and welcome to the Den of Vipers, Kim. Thank you so much for coming up. Did you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me. And thanks for mentioning the beautiful soda tweet that has gotten so much attention. By the way, just to be clear, I love Bitcoin. I've never stopped loving Bitcoin. So, just because we're not on the same team right now, I think you can still treat me fairly because I've been promoting Bitcoin since.
What happened there?
Oh, come on, guys. Don't do that. Come on. Please do not do that. Please do not do that, you guys. Let's keep it cool here. He's just introducing himself. Kim, please come up on the stage. Safe space for you to speak. I hope that no one has. We might need to back down again. Make everybody not an admin except for Dennis. Okay. Yeah,
I think you should demod everybody there. I've been testing a hypothesis on Clubhouse, and when you break 15 moderators, the room just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a very good hypothesis. I'm not sure how many of you are okay with sticking around after being shoved down to the audience and pulled back up. But if you're interested in that, we can have. All right. Yeah, Kim, you want to? Everyone's going down, and I'll bring you back up. Let's do it. Everyone's self dropping. Everyone who's a moderator, drop down, and I'll bring him back up. Go ahead, everybody. Yep. Keep going. I know you guys. Come on, it's tough.
Fucking Chinese.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, I have a question for Kim. If it's
okay, come here. Hold on. This is moving very. It's hard for me to move around.
Everyone
Kim.
raise your hand.
All right.
Not everyone.
Yeah,
sorry,
raise your hand.
mods.
Come back up.
Just
Kim, nice to see you again.
I'm back.
You're back. Don't worry. It's just me and you now. No one can drop you down to the audience. Would love to hear you start over from the beginning on your introduction. You talked about how you are you're pro Bitcoin, but you're over there with Bitcoin Cash. And I guess a lot of us that are Bitcoiners feel, you're like a pretty smart guy. You've been around the industry for a long time. You're into the cypherpunk stuff. You're a rebel. So am I. Why Bitcoin Cash, and why do the arguments that you've obviously heard the arguments for Bitcoin, but why do they not seem to land with you as far as the whole decentralization aspect of Bitcoin Cash, where the blocks get too big, it can't be used as global money?
Yes, so I don't know how much you still heard before it was removed, but what I wanted to say is, I've always been a supporter of Bitcoin, and when we started development on K.IM, our intention was to do this with Lightning and Liquid and make it all work. But in our testing environment and developing, and trying to implement Lightning and Liquid for over a year, we just got increasingly frustrated because it didn't work. And we've run large volume tests and ran into scalability issues and ran into so many problems that we had to start looking for an alternative. And we ended up with Bitcoin Cash as a test environment that worked really well.
But as far as the argument, I understand the transaction throughput, and that's been an argument in a debate hotly contested for a very long time. But how do you come to grips with the decentralization aspect? That's what we're all really here for. We're here for the decentralization. We're here to essentially say, fuck you to the government, fuck you to the big banks and the Fed, and that we are in control now. We control the money. And how do you see Bitcoin Cash continuing on into the future when the blocks are going to get so big? It's going to be potentially global money, right, at this point. And when you make the blocks that big, the blockchain gets massive. Nobody's going to be able to run a full node, and nobody's going to be able to have the bandwidth to do this. So there's going to be very few nodes on the network. How do you come to grips with that part of the argument?
Well, I don't really agree with, the issue about large or small blocks, because the hardware is getting better. The the availability of cheap storage is getting better every year. So I just don't agree with the consensus that Bitcoin Core made at the end to keep the block small. I thought that was not necessary because we're just in the last 5 years. I mean, look how much cheaper storage has become, how much better the servers are now. I just didn't see the necessity for keeping small blocks.
So when it comes to the argument, I understand Moore's law. The technology that we have is getting better. It's getting cheaper. I totally agree with you in some regards that is an important factor when it comes to this whole argument. But I don't know. In my personal opinion, I kind of came onto the scene in the middle of this fight, right, in the middle of this war. And I came to the conclusion that Moore's law, it is working, but it's not traveling fast enough. And essentially what's going to happen is if you decide to scale Bitcoin Cash as global money, the amount of transactions that would be required in order to scale Bitcoin Cash, you're going to be talking about a blockchain ledger which with Bitcoin is currently 350 some gigs. But with Bitcoin Cash, it could be not just terahashes or but it could be terabytes, but petabytes. Yes, thank you, JC. And so now it's like you're talking about stuff that's not even available to the retail consumer. And I think the whole point about decentralized money is money that the individual can, self-verify and self-audit. And I don't know if that will be possible in a Bitcoin Cash world.
Well, the way Bitcoin Cash is operating now, you're probably totally right. But we are, of course, also innovating. And since I started getting involved, I've basically, gotten a lot of developers interested to start working with us. And of course, we're also going to work on innovations and solutions that are solving that problem. I don't see it as a major issue.
Okay, so I guess, that's really where we just come to a divide, because to me, the idea of Bitcoin is the ability to be self-sovereign. It's the ability to verify that I own the Bitcoin that, my node says I own. And in a Bitcoin Cash world, I don't think someone that's on a low net worth status, which I wouldn't consider myself to be high net worth, but someone that's a lower end of the spectrum, they're not going to be able to afford to self-verify. And I think going into the future, that's going to be super important. Otherwise, in my opinion, you're just going to have centralization of power in the hands of the elite and the rich once again, which is really kind of the system that we live in today. So I guess that's kind of where we divide. I really think it's important to have a currency, a global currency that empowers the individual and not groups and not large conglomerates. And I see what you're saying. You're building stuff out. You're working on ways to make it better. But do you not see the value in someone on the low end of the spectrum, someone who doesn't have a lot of money, being able to audit and verify that they own the Bitcoin or the Bitcoin Cash that the network says they have?
Yeah, but that's just assuming that we can't do that. The assumption that if we grow to 100 times our current size, we wouldn't be able to do that in 5 years from now is just wrong. Because, of course, we're going to innovate. We're going to make sure that we can handle the traffic. The thing that I don't understand, and by the way, thank you for having me here, and thank you for being, friendly, because I do not like the tension between the different tribes. I think it's counterproductive. I think competition is good. But let me just say this, Bitcoin has evolved now to be this store of value. And when I see people like Michael Saylor giving interviews and talking about how Bitcoin is this new bank of the internet, and it's really just for saving your asset. It's not really about spending. I feel bad, because if we are ever in a situation where governments decide they have enough of crypto and they want to regulate it and destroy it, if we don't have critical mass with actual utility where people are using it every day, and we have, hundreds of millions of users actually paying for stuff with crypto, we are running into real difficulties defending ourselves. This whole crypto revolution depends on usage. And that's my main concern.
Saving.
Hold on. I can keep going here, and then maybe we'll bring up some other people to talk. But I'm going to try to keep answering and talking one-on-one with Kim for just a moment longer. So you brought up a few different points there, and I think I'm going to tackle the first one, which is that you're saying that Michael Saylor is, saying it's a store of value, and it's kind of changed the narrative on Bitcoin. And you could say that, but it's really not so much that the narrative has changed as much as our understanding of this technology has changed. In the beginning, people were talking about it, global payments, medium of exchange, but we all kind of took a step back, and many in this room probably already knew this, but it didn't become common knowledge until more in the last 4 or 5 years. But we all kind of took a step back and we realized, well, in order for something to be a medium of exchange, it has to go through an evolutionary path. And that evolutionary path is the same path that gold took. Gold started out as a collectible, a nascent collectible, and people liked it. It was shiny rocks, right? And, it was portable and it was malleable. They could do cool things, but they could make jewelry out of it. And then eventually, over time, enough people started collecting it that it became a store of value. And we all started kind of storing our wealth in this cool thing that everybody wanted to collect. And eventually, when there was enough people who saw it as a store of value, gold eventually became a medium of exchange. People started bartering with it, and it kind of became this intermediary for a world that had kind of been birthed out of just purely trading goods back and forth. So if you wanted a cow and you had chickens, you had to go through maybe multiple trades in order to get the cow. But now you could just trade gold, and that was a big leap for society, right? Eventually, what happened was went from a medium of exchange, then it went to a unit of account. And that's the full transition of something becoming a monetary, a perfect money in a sense, right? Sound money. And that's the trajectory that we see going on with Bitcoin right now. It was a collectible in the beginning. It was magic internet money. We all thought it was just this kind of cool, unique thing. No one really understood it at all. Just fun thing to have. And then it's going through this path where people thought it was becoming a medium of exchange, but in fact, it needed to go through that second phase, which is the store of value phase. And in my opinion, we're in that phase right now. We will be in that phase for some time. And that's that value that's coming onto, this kind of goes into what you're saying on one of your second points, but that value coming into Bitcoin is what protects Bitcoin, not the actual users themselves. The value that's being accrued onto the Bitcoin network is what protects it, not necessarily an individual user. So I can see your argument where you're saying that we need to hit mass adoption with users, but I just see it differently. We need to hit mass adoption with value.
Yeah, I can respond to that. My main concern has always been, since I got involved in crypto early on, that the governments are going to see this as a threat, because in reality, there's no benefit for the US government to support Bitcoin or any other crypto for that matter. Eventually you are competing with their money printing power, and the bigger Bitcoin becomes, the larger the threat becomes. And sooner or later, I can guarantee you the US government and many other governments are going to make moves to try and regulate crypto and ban it. So with that in mind, let's just assume for a second that I'm right, and that is the future we are facing. My objective is to really have a cryptocurrency that has mass usage, because if you have hundreds of millions of users around the world receiving their payroll, paying for their groceries, paying for something simple like soda or coffee or, their rent or whatever, then it becomes much harder to shut it down. When you, on the other hand, have a store of value that sits now primarily it's always increasing with institutionals and the 1% that see it more and more as an investment vehicle, then it's much easier to shut down. Because if the US government regulates, all of those 1%ers are going to comply and basically hand over their Bitcoin, and then it's game over. So this is where I'm coming from, and I like everyone to understand this. I'm really not against Bitcoin. I'm trying to see crypto as a whole to succeed. And I think from my point of view, given my experience with the US government, my understanding of how it works, how they operate, US empire will not want to lose its power by controlling the money supply and being able to do sanctions and all these things that they do to maintain power as an empire. I just don't want them to destroy the crypto revolution, and that is really where I'm coming from.
So
can I say something?
No, Kim, hold on, please, hold on. I completely agree with you. I think that is the number one threat, right? That's a threat that we've all talked about for a very long time. And I agree with you completely that we agree on that point, right? But you're saying that mass adoption by users is what's going to stop it. And that's kind of where I disagree. I personally believe that, especially in America, the big money interests are the ones who are in control. And if the big money interests own Bitcoin, then it's going to provide not only resources, but it's going to provide lobbying money. It's going to provide all of this infrastructure of value that is going to help protect Bitcoin from some sort of government state level attack. And when you have these big money interests coming in, the banks, the investment funds, the hedge fund managers, these guys, they don't want to lose money. They're not just going to bend over and be like, yeah, sure, let's just kill Bitcoin. They're going to defend it with every single means of.
Well, let me tell you why. Let me just tell you why I think that this is an important point. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Just like the U.S. government, the banks don't like Bitcoin either. We're changing the status quo, right? The banks will not be able to operate as they have in the past when Bitcoin succeeds, even as a store of value. So that you think for a moment that the banks or the big hedge funds are on your side, I think is wrong. And they are actually actively lobbying politicians to try and do something against crypto. They are spending a lot of dollars to make sure that you guys don't have a future.
Yeah, so hold on. Please, no one jump in at this point. I can continue a little bit longer with one-on-one, and then we'd be more than happy to bring some people in. But I think it's important that we keep this conversation one-on-one for the sake of stability of the conversation. Okay, so I agree with your point that this is where it comes down, right? Like the governments, that's the ultimate battle, right? But you're saying that the big banks are going to lobby against us. But now it's almost like we have, and let me finish this point, and I want to make one more point. We have this team of money on our side, though, now. We have the hedge fund managers and all these other guys are on our side. That's kind of that point there, right? And we could debate that all day. But here's a question that I have, and I'll kind of just continue talking about it. Maybe you can jump in if you want to answer the question. But what do you think the government cares more about? Do you think the United States cares more about the dollar and its power or gold and its power?
Well, 100% the dollar, because it's printing money like crazy.
Hold on, and then I just want to stop you real quick and ask you one more question. Do you see Bitcoin Cash more like the dollar or more like gold? And which is a bigger threat to the United States? Is it Bitcoin?
More like the dollar.
Okay, so then you would naturally agree that Bitcoin Cash would be seen as more of a threat to the United States hegemony than Bitcoin itself, which is more like gold. And the Fed chairman actually went as far as to say that last week.
No, I heard that, but let's not be naive here for a second. I mean, you guys are also saying once Lightning is fully operational and perfect, that it can be used for transactions. So you are also competing with the US dollar, right?
But it's like a Trojan horse, right? It's like a Trojan horse. So we're starting as a store of value, and that puts us in a safer position eventually. And I don't even think it's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years. Sorry, go ahead, Kim. Kim, you go ahead.
Now, I have to admit that the strategy so far has been working out fine. I really think that Bitcoin has come a long way, and I can see why certain decisions were made. But it's just naive to think, just because you're focusing on store of value now, that is going to protect you from regulation later. Because even as a store of value, you are competing with the power of the US government, and they will not have it.
But this is my whole point, I guess, Kim. And maybe we can finish here. We don't need to go all day. I understand that you're not going to come in this room and you're not going to leave agreeing with me. I don't think either of us have the intention of leaving the room. But just more so, I hope at the end of this room that we can just keep an open mind about everything that's going on. And I think that when you really look at what's important to the U.S. government, the most important part of the U.S. government's power is the dollar. It's the petrodollar. It's the forcing everybody to actually use the dollar. But when we're using Bitcoin, I'll finish it. I'll let you go ahead. When we're using Bitcoin, we're using it as a store of value now, today. We're not using it as a dollar. So when you're using Bitcoin Cash, though, that's essentially the argument that you're making, that you're competing directly with the U.S. dollar. And maybe Lightning is down the path, whatever, right? But at this point, right now, today, we're competing with gold, and Bitcoin Cash is competing with the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, and let me just reply to that, and please give me a minute, because this is important. And I want everyone to understand that I'm really your friend. I'm not your enemy. So I think when you hear me, you will understand why I'm saying this. Eventually, of course, the goal of crypto is to replace fiat currency, which is currently being used to, have a license to print money, to create more and more debt, to bring the government into more and more trouble. It's unsustainable. And sooner or later, that house of cards is going to come crashing down. When that happens, we need to have something in place that can take the reign, and that can be the future money, and it should be crypto. Right?
I agree with you, but do you think what do you think is going to replace? What do you think is going to replace the U.S. dollar? Do you think it's going to be a centralized Bitcoin Cash, or do you think it's going to be a centralized CBDC, central bank digital currency?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with the statement that Bitcoin Cash is centralized, right? But let's not dwell on that.
Okay, let's move on from that point. Then.
Right. Let's just assume that is an unfair accusation. Okay.
I won't debate it with you because currently that's a hotly contested point, but it's not the point of the conversation where we are right now. Why don't you go ahead?
Yes. So, and by the way, like I said, the more usage BCH will gain, and the more market share it gains, the smaller this problem that you perceive of decentralization being an issue for BCH is going to go away, right?
Well, no, I have to stop you there, though. The more Bitcoin Cash gets used, the more centralized it will become. Because the bigger the blocks get and the more full the blocks become, the bigger the blockchain gets. And the bigger the blockchain gets, the more computing power you need, the more bandwidth you need, and the more storage space you need for the blockchain, which means the amount of people who can run a node becomes limited. It becomes shrinking and shrinking over time, especially if this becomes something that happens rapidly.
Yeah, but that would only be the case if there was no evolution of hardware and pricing in the space. But that's not correct. We get more and more powerful machines, more and more powerful storage, and at cheaper and cheaper prices. So you can't really assume that. It's
Bitcoin's harder to run today than it was 10 years ago. So, I mean, and that's Bitcoin with 1 megabyte block, or 2 if you want to count SegWit. It's harder to run today than it was.
Yeah. Look, I hear those arguments, right? But let's just put that to one side for now. And let's talk about what we need to do to make sure that when the governments decide, and it's going to happen, to regulate crypto and push it out of existence, what is the best way to defend ourselves? Just assuming that these banks you are mentioning are not going to be on your side and are actually going to be quite happy with the government.
So that's
just a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
Finish it.
Just let me finish. So let's just assume that these are not going to come to Bitcoin's rescue, right? The only thing that is going to save crypto is if the masses say, we want this to be our money. We have enough of your corrupt financial system. It's not going to be the banks. They are the status quo. They don't want anything to change. They make, triple-digit $1 billion every year. Why the hell would they change it? The Federal Reserve feeds them interest-free money that they invest in stocks, and through that, They control, over 50% of the voting rights in the U.S. economy, in the listed companies. They are not going to want to depart from that power. So the only chance in my mind, right, and I've been thinking a lot about this over the years, is that we have a mass of people, hundreds of millions of people standing up to their governments and saying, no, we've had this old financial system enough. It was corrupt. It led to this, downfall, which is going to come. We'll have a severe economic depression coming up, in the next 2-3 years. And then people will be looking for an alternative. And the best alternative is going to be a crypto that is actually being utilized en masse with, really mass penetration in all the different markets. And that's what I'm trying to focus on. And please don't hate me for it. I'm trying just as much as you guys to see crypto succeed and to have a future and to survive the coming crypto wars, which I'm 100% certain are going to come.
Listen, so I think that I appreciate you coming up here, and there are a lot of people that they really feel very hotly about this. And as you can see, it was difficult to even, have a conversation because it's very difficult. There's a lot on the line right now. I agree with you. Essentially the whole entire financial system is on the line at this point. But the points where I really, really disagree with your assumption that mass adoption by people, by users, is what's going to protect the network. The network is not protected by individual users with wallets. Those wallets don't do anything to defend the network whatsoever. The thing that defends the networks is the nodes. The nodes defend the network from an outside attack. And the only way you can continue to grow the node network or maintain the node network is to keep the block size small. Otherwise, it becomes nearly impossible for the individual users, individual people all over the planet to run a node. We're very privileged in the United States and some other Western countries and maybe some wealthier countries, North Korea. There's many countries where we're very privileged, right? But there's a lot of places all over the world where they don't have the ability to spend it's like $200 to $300 right now to run a node. And that's if you want to buy, the cheap products. Imagine if you 10x, imagine if you 100x, which is what you're talking about. You're talking about going from 1% of the planet using Bitcoin to 100% of the planet using Bitcoin. So that's 100x from where we are right now, right? And the amount of transactions that you'd have to put through that network would just be insane. You'd be talking about like amounts of storage that no human being, no individual could afford to store, which would mean that the centralization of the nodes would be massively increased to maybe 1 to 5 tops users in the world, which means that the government at that point could go with a gun to one of those, to one or to all 5, and tell them that they have to shut down. And that's really what makes Bitcoin so unique compared to so many of the other cryptocurrencies out there and all the other systems that people have tried to build, is the decentralization. The decentralization of the nodes is what protects the network against a state level attack. And so that's why I think it's so important. I will sacrifice everything. I will sacrifice any aspect. The smart contracts, fuck the smart contracts. The transaction throughput, screw the transaction throughput. It's so much more important that we protect the decentralization of the network. And I will literally die to protect the decentralization of the network. I totally get that you say that this is a big war and it's so important. And I 100% agree with you. But the big war is over the decentralization. It's not over users. The users don't protect the network. The nodes do.
Yeah, and we do agree on decentralization. I just don't agree with your assumption that BCH can't maintain a high level of decentralization. Let me tell you what I think is going to happen. People will be running nodes on their phones. Just look at the evolution of mobile chips and how powerful the latest iPhone 12 is. Wait another 5 to 10 years and you will have phones that are as powerful as the most powerful servers that we are using today. And they will not be unaffordable. And you can basically, while you charge your phone at night and you're not using it, you can run a node. I've been thinking about this for many years. I proposed basically an alternative internet with MegaNet. You can Google my name and Google MegaNet and see what I've said about this in the past. And it's actually being developed right now. It's called LokiNet. An Australian company has built it. So I'm not that concerned about the nodes. I just don't see this as a valid reason not to focus on mass adoption of crypto with millions and millions of people using it for real life uses. That is what's going to save crypto. That, in my opinion.
Kim. Yeah. So I mean, it's not. I'll let some other people jump in here if they want to politely engage in the conversation. But I want to make the last point, though. It's not. Just,
I really don't think politeness is necessary right now, because what he's been saying, he's been spouting lies for 20 minutes.
Jimmy,
it's very frustrating because you're not calling him out on all his lies.
Well,
this is very frustrating for me, because you basically agreed to let him speak about he's giving talking points from 2017.
Jimmy,
like, this is very frustrating.
Listen, if you have the ability to debate the points, then debate the points, okay? But Kim, my last point is that I want to say this, and then we can end it here, and you can take off if you want to. I appreciate you coming on. A lot of people are probably going to give me a lot of heat for this conversation, but I think it's important that we have these conversations, okay? And Jimmy, I would love for you to talk. I just want you to talk back and forth with some level of politeness. Okay. I don't care if you think he's a scammer. That's aside the point. If you have the truth, speak the truth. Okay. That's all I have to say.
Well, I don't like how you kicked everybody out. There's a whole group of people that would have backed you up.
Listen, that wasn't even my idea, Jimmy. That was not my idea. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, you basically gave him a platform for 20 minutes to just spout his lies. I don't like that.
What lie?
Listen,
I didn't hear lie. I don't have.
I think everyone who listened to me here can agree that I'm not lying. I'm just saying my point of view.
That's all. Listen, I want to get back to just finishing the conversation. If other people can have the conversation politely, then let's have the conversation politely. Otherwise, the conversation isn't going to happen at all. Okay, so Kim, my last little point here is that it's not just about the storage on whatever it is, your phone, right? It's also about the bandwidth. The amount of bandwidth that you would need to be able to process and validate these transactions is not going to be possible. You're saying, okay, what's the timeline? What's the timeline? Do we have 10 years? 10 years left?
All right, look. I'm really educated about this stuff, right? So let's talk about bandwidth, because I know bandwidth better than anybody.
I agree. You're very knowledgeable. But
I want to respond to your I want to respond to your bandwidth point, because that's a very important point, right? So when it comes to bandwidth, you all remember Mega Upload was about 4% of the internet. I understand bandwidth better than anybody. We now have 5G. We now have stuff like Starlink. We are going to have terabit connectivity on mobile devices. Neither bandwidth nor storage are going to be a limiting factor for decentralization. I can tell you that.
Okay, but the point is, Kim, you have a timeline here. We are running out of time. The clock is ticking. How many years do we have left? Maybe 10 at most before we really need to make this move. And that's why I see you're so desperate. I wouldn't say desperate, but you're such in a rush to get people onto Bitcoin Cash. But in 10 years, you're essentially saying, let's move the entire planet onto Bitcoin Cash within the next 10 to 15 years. You're going to 100x the Bitcoin blockchain. You think a phone is going to be able to store like 50 terabytes of information? I just don't see that happening in the next 10 years. Moore's law would never be able to keep up with that rate of improvement. I just don't see it happening. But, obviously we're going to agree to disagree. I think that, we kind of come to the conclusion of the conversation. I saw Jimmy left. I wish he would have stayed and had the conversation. But if you want to say one last point, because James, go ahead.
Yeah, I would really like to say one last point, if I may, and then I will stay and listen, because I like listening to you guys, okay? My last point that I like to make is, just for a moment, cut me some slack. I'm not here to sell a scam. I'm not here to promote something that isn't working. I'm not here to undermine Bitcoin. Bitcoin is in a very good position, and you guys have done an awesome job, and I have absolutely no problems with you. The only thing that I see that is not fair is this name calling me a liar, calling me a scammer, saying that I've been bought, when in fact I don't even own a single BCH. It's just ridiculous how tribal things have become and how aggressive things have become. I think we are all in the same boat. We all want crypto to succeed. It's okay to have competition because competition means more innovation. It's going to further Bitcoin as well. If others have great ideas and execute on them and grow some market share, and then you guys see, maybe we change something a little bit here, a little bit there. It's a good thing. It's not a negative thing. And I would really like us all to come back to a space where we can be friends. Like, I'm not your enemy.
I'm going to let you go ahead, James. Kim, I just want to say thank you. I have points I could say to that, but it's been enough for me for today. James, did you want to say something?
Yeah, first off, Kim, nice to meet you. First time we've ever spoken. I want to say that I actually admire what I see in you as really intense practicality. It seems like we are co-belligerents in a fight that it seems the destination we have is shared. It seems that we see two different ways of getting there. And this is just technology, right? And you seem to have adopted a different approach to the technology than I currently hold, for instance. And I have a couple very practical questions. But what I hear you saying when you're talking about Bitcoin Cash being good because of the big block size, to me, it almost seems to me that is somewhat irrelevant whether it's better or not, because it seems to me almost like if you were telling me there's a better peer-to-peer file sharing protocol than BitTorrent. And I would say to you, yeah, but BitTorrent is where the consensus is. There's already all this content shared on BitTorrent. And I kind of feel like the Bitcoin network, the main Bitcoin network, de facto is like that BitTorrent network. And in other words, it's where whether it's the best or not, it's where the consensus is. And just practically, how would you even go about pulling the consensus off of Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash? That's the first question. And second question, it seems like you've had a bad experience with Lightning, but I've been seeing tons of innovation in Lightning and much improvements in Lightning. And I see that Bitcoin is a layer, I call it a layer 7 protocol because it's on the layer 7 of the OSI stack. It's networking for money and it's slow, but that's fine. The block size is not a problem because we can and should build layers on it like we've been doing for 30 years, which is like Lightning. For instance, we have a bot in one of the groups that we're in Telegram associated with one of the Clubhouse rooms, and we have a Lightning bot in there. And we've been sending each other Lightning payments and even doing crowdfundings, like today. In other words, I feel like the infrastructure is being built, and it just seems to me out of left field that it would be like, let's go do something else and start.
Yeah. All right. Let me answer your first question. The first question is, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm getting a call.
While Kim's taking the call, just everybody that wants to come up here, if you want to have James, you did a great job there. If you want to come up and have a direct conversation, I don't notice anything that Kim is saying. It's a differing of opinion so far. Obviously, some people see Kim as a scammer.
So
one second, Kim.
Yeah.
People see him as a scammer, but if you want to come up here and have a conversation, and I'm going to create a space where people can have the conversation. I know so many people already messaging me, telling me to fuck off for this already. So, but we're just going to keep going a little bit longer, okay? James, thank you for what you said so far. Kim, did you want to respond?
Yeah, so let me respond to the first question, right? You say there's consensus, and right now, of course, Bitcoin is dominating the crypto space, and we all acknowledge that, right? No question about it. But it's less than 4% of internet users that are even into crypto at this point. It means there's still a 96% market that has to be captured, right? So we are early in the game. Crypto is still in its infancy. Leadership can change, with new innovations, new ideas, and also good marketing, can bring new people into the space and, killer apps and all that. So, I think it's way too early to call a winner, and I think because there's so much market share to take, Bitcoin would be well advised to do more to gain more market share from day-to-day users that actually want to transact in micropayments,
Oh man, I could speak so much on this. I've worked for
Lightning. Isn't Lightning going to do that?
That's what it is doing. It is doing that. Like, did you know right now in the United States, you can buy anything you want at any website you want using Lightning, as long as that website accepts Visa, because of a Visa partnership? I mean, it's already happening. People can use that, and it works great. It works amazing. I work for a company right now that lets people play video games like Counter-Strike and put as little as like 5 cents up into a pot and then compete and then get if it's 25 cents in the pot, they get that when they're done. And we built a wallet for gamers. It's great. You have gamer tags. You can tip people on Discord. You can tip people on Telegram. It all goes to the same account. It's super seamless, super easy to use. There's no fees, no setup, all that stuff. And gamers are using it, and they love it, and they have and it works. And it scales a million times better than Bitcoin Cash. And it's at its best time. Even if you did have a phone that was 20 years more advanced than today's phones, you don't need that for Lightning. You can do it on today's phones with today's tech in a way that actually, and you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Gaming is a great part of the puzzle. And just to give you some unreleased information, Bitcoin Cash has developed a gaming ecosystem that is going to be implemented with a couple of big publishers, where gamers can trade the loot that they earn inside the games, and they can use QR codes or links to exchange these items. And of course, we also see gaming as a major part to bring more and more people to crypto. The thing is, like, why the toxicity? Why does it have to be a battle to the death? Why can't we see, who is doing better, and why can't we be friendly competitors instead of, fighting each other?
Well, for example, if you look somebody.
I'm all for it. I'm just being very, very practical. Very, very practical. For instance, I believe just technically, if Bitcoin Cash were to be the solution, you would still need a Lightning network on it. In other words, the bigger block size does not accomplish the streaming micropayments that we get that I think are going to be the key to mass adoption. I think the world is about to get streaming money, and I think it's going to start with Bitcoin Lightning. And I think when Gen Z gets a taste of it, it's going to change commerce forever, and it's not 5 years away. I think it's going to start this year even, and I think right candidate for it. I'm just intensely practical. If you have another solution, I'd love to hear it. I just see technical issues.
Kim, can I ask you a question, please? Thanks. So,
yes,
thanks for being here. My name's Jason, and I used to be a regulator during the financial crisis, and I talk to a lot of congressmen and senators, and I do a lot of Bitcoin lobbying activities. In terms of like the idea that the government might ban Bitcoin, I honestly haven't heard those conversations. In fact, I've actually heard congressmen and senators talk about the freedom that Bitcoin gives people, that no one can tell you we're not going to lend to you anymore. It's very much something that I've seen congressmen and senators adopt. Even the laser eyes. One senator did it, Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming, and also Warren Davidson of Ohio. So one thing that happened to me once, and I won't name who the congressman was, but I was with somebody who's very large in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and we were talking to somebody in Congress, and the person politely said, I want you to give me the president of Bitcoin, because I want to shut this network down. Get me the president of Bitcoin on the phone. And I'll tell you, Kim, it was with pride that I said, I can't tell you who the president of Bitcoin is, because it is a decentralized society. It's a decentralized network. I can't just call up somebody who's going to tell you how you can control Bitcoin. But with Bitcoin Cash, that's a whole other subject. You know it very well. And I think you honestly should be a little ashamed of yourself that you're up here telling everybody that somehow Bitcoin Cash can even come close to being a competitor to Bitcoin, because that's a network that has had a 51% attack. And I'd like to.
Yeah, you went really well until you said I should be ashamed. I just don't understand how you could say that. I believe that what I'm doing is okay. I have a different view to your view, and I'm not doing anything that I should be ashamed about. Quite the opposite. I apply a different strategy to see crypto succeed long term. You have your strategy and you've been doing really well with it, and I have no problem with it at all. If it is Bitcoin in the end that is going to, dominate and lead us into this crypto revolution future, fantastic. I would absolutely love it. But I don't agree with everything that Bitcoin has done, because I know the US government better than most people. I understand the power struggles. I've been a big supporter of WikiLeaks early on. That's also one of the reasons why the case against me was even initiated, because I was a major donor. I've been in the cyberpunk movement from the beginning. So I just have a different view because of my own experience and the knowledge that I've gained over the years about the move of the US government against crypto. It's going to come, and it's going to be worse than most people imagine. And I just want to have done the best I can with the knowledge that I have to try and prevent them from succeeding. And if that means that there are 10 different cryptocurrencies all competing with Bitcoin in the end, for the lion market share, if that achieves that crypto is going to survive and the crypto revolution is going to continue, well, then I feel like I've done a good job. So, just please don't say things like I should be ashamed just because I have a different view. I'm doing it from
Kim, I want to step in, bro, for a quick two, Kim, and say,
Yes.
yeah, guys, listen, we can have the conversation. And this is the honestly, is my biggest thing now. This is what I'm all about. I think that for a very long time, I've been perfectly okay and perfectly fine with having these walls up, labeling everyone that's not a Bitcoiner a scammer, because I think it was important for Bitcoin to go through a certain phase, right, where we needed to defend ourselves and we really needed to root out anyone that could be a threat. But I think that we're entering a new phase now, and I think we need to start having these conversations again. I've had this conversation with Jimmy, and he just disagrees with me. That's all. He doesn't think Kim should have a place to speak. And maybe he's right. But I think, in my opinion, it's time to at least give it a chance, lower the fucking shield a little bit, lower the armor just a little bit and have the conversation. And I think we need to have the conversation without calling each other names. It's so easy to drop to that level. And Jason, I get why, you feel that way towards Kim, but I think it's so important, if we're going to have these conversations, to not use name calling. We don't need to stoop to that level. It's not necessary anymore. And I think we can have a great dialogue. But Kim, you can finish your point, and then I want to see if JC or Brad want to jump in here, or Shannon.
Yeah, I appreciate really what you just said, because like I said, I'm really your friend. I'm not your enemy. I have a different approach to thinking how to make sure that we can transition into this global crypto revolution. I think utilization is the key. I don't agree with everything that is going on the Bitcoin side. And I think it's not bad to have not all eggs in one basket. I think it's okay if there are competing views, competing blockchains with different ideas. Whatever succeeds in the end, if it brings us to this common goal that crypto is the future and fiat will be gone, and with it, all the corruption, the wars, the illegality, the way governments are running things today, if we can see that all change because crypto succeeds, then, we've all won. And I think we have that shared goal. And because we have that shared goal, there's no reason for us to hate each other or call each other names. I would really like to have.
Okay, Kim, let's move past it though. We agree on that point.
So,
let's move past we don't need
that
vitriol anymore.
So I don't have any ill will towards Kim, and some people probably think I should. But aside from that, I do think that there is kind of a reason. When we look at, for example, NBA Top Shots, it's a NFT thing. They're selling crypto cards on the Wax blockchain, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Flow. I don't remember which one. But no Bitcoiners are coming out and saying Wax is a scam or whatever. I mean, sure, they might say NFTs generally are a bad investment and in that sense a scam, but they don't crucify people for supporting NBA Top Shots. And yet when it comes to Bitcoin Cash, it's different. And why? What's the difference between NBA Top Shots and Bitcoin Cash? I think the difference is definitely in the marketing and the narratives. When you have, for example, Bitcoin.com, the domain, saying it's the real Bitcoin, telling people it's the original vision, all of these other things, trying to, when you click on buy Bitcoin on the website, It tells you to buy Bitcoin Cash. There's a lot of naive people that don't know a lot about Bitcoin. They want to buy Bitcoin. And these groups, they leverage that. And if you know, and you can't deny it, Kim, that Roger Ver he's almost every day on Twitter talking shit about Bitcoin. Every day. It's his whole Twitter feed is like the anti-Bitcoin Twitter feed. So if NBA Top Shots was every day talking shit about Bitcoin, then yes, people would consider anybody who was supporting that to be in bad faith. And that's a big difference.
Yeah. So right now I'm here. I'm not Roger Ver, and I'm not talking shit about Bitcoin. Okay. Let's just all agree on that. We have different points of views. I actually really love Bitcoin, and I love the whole Bitcoin community. So let me just be absolutely clear about that. I can see why the name and the domain bitcoin.com create allergic reactions. I had the same thing. I tell you quite frankly, in the beginning, when I had my early discussions with Roger and other BCH whales, and we were discussing about me taking a role and getting involved, I even suggested, why don't we change the fucking name? Like, we don't need any of this toxic shit. And in the end, I just thought it doesn't make a major difference now. The brand is already recognized. I think it's okay because Bitcoin Cash shares 99% of the DNA of Bitcoin. I just didn't, in the beginning, I had a similar reaction to you, and I thought it isn't necessary.
I'll be right. Hold on a second. 1 second. John, could you control and mod?
Can you mod me if you don't?
Yeah, I'll mod you.
Yeah, if you mod
I'm
me,
just gonna
Jason, Dennis, I can help out in about 3 minutes. But if you mod me, I'm glad to help out.
Can you keep things calm for a second? I'll be right back.
Yeah, try.
So
go ahead.
If I can, So Jason brought up a point, and you guys have talked about it a little bit, and I may have missed a deeper discussion earlier on. And that had to do with the fact that, like Kim, you mentioned that you think the governments are going to come after cryptocurrency at some point because when the dollar or whatever currency they're using loses its power, that's how they control the people. It's going to lose their power. They have less control over the people, and they come after it. When they come after it, there's an important piece that we've kind of danced around and not directly spoke about, and that Jason brought that up, is that there are figureheads for Bitcoin Cash that can be directly attacked. If multiple governments decide to go after currencies, they can go after those figureheads, and that when they take down those figureheads, like right now, there's no one to oppose those figureheads in changing the blockchain and changing Bitcoin Cash into something else and allowing them to have more control, and because of its centralized nature. Whereas if you were to go after Bitcoin, like, what's the attack vector? Go after the miners. They're spread out all over the world. Go after the node holders. They're spread out all over the world. Where Bitcoin Cash does have a very centralized ecosystem, there's very centralized control in that aspect, and it creates this one central point of attack. And I think that's going to be an important thing to pay attention to if you're worried about the world's governments coming after, crypto.
Yeah, I do disagree on that point that you think it's very centralized, right? It's actually not. I have a lot of struggles having to talk with a lot of people to get consensus about some of the things that we want to do and that I would like to change. So it's absolutely not like I can just pick up the phone, call one or two guys and get it all done, right? That's a misconception, and that's not correct. I've said earlier, this point about decentralization have been brought up again and again. If anyone understands decentralization, it's me. I've been in this industry for a long time. You may know that one of the most successful encryption websites is mega.nz. It's up and running with over 300 million users. So I know what I'm doing. Of course, I'm having these conversations with everyone at BCH to improve the status quo. I don't like it the way it is right now. I would like to see even more decentralization. I would like to see improvements, and especially I want to see more developers. And I don't know if you guys have seen a new sidechain that is coming out for BCH called Smart BCH, and that's being released in May. And that is going to bring a lot of new developers to this ecosystem. And with it, hopefully also, more miners and more transactions, and eventually the hash rate of BCH is going to increase, and it's going to help with the decentralization and all the other things. So I do agree with you. It's not perfect the way it is right now. But that's why I got involved and I said, look, what can I do to make sure that it becomes perfect? And maybe on some fronts we can even improve what others are doing. So that's really what I'm known for and what my strength is. I'm an innovator. I think about solving problems, and many of the problems that you are mentioning are, of course, on my mind as well.
And thank you, by the way, for Mega. I think there are lots of people who have used Mega and appreciate that contribution to everybody who uses it. You mentioned the hash rate there for a second. If you see what's behind me in my picture, I deal with Bitcoin mining a little bit. And right now, Bitcoin Cash's hash rate is 10 times less than Bitcoin, 100 times, 100 times less than Bitcoin. What would they do if all of a sudden, the miners just decided, we're sick of this, we're going to waste a few hours of electricity and end Bitcoin Cash? That could happen.
Yeah, well, the good thing is that there are a couple of really big miners that are very friendly to BCH, and they would come to the rescue. They have done that before. These attempts were made before. And so with that hash power that we can instantly activate when we need it, there is not really a risk of that kind of attack being successful.
Oh, there definitely is. I don't understand, Kim. I mean, this is the weird...
No, I can assure you that what I'm telling you is the truth based on my knowledge.
JC and John, gentlemen, I think it's time we shut this room down. It's gone on. This was supposed to be an Ethereum topic. We can continue this in another room, and that's more than okay. But this is the point of Cafe Bitcoin is not to go into the ins and outs of Bitcoin Cash.
All right, let's do that. Kim, you want to join?
All right, guys, I appreciate the conversation that we had, and I wish you all the best. And
Kim,
I hope you know that I'm not against it.
It was great that you were here. Thank you so much.
We're all fighting the same fight here, and we'll see what the solution is as time goes by. So thank you, everybody.
I apologize. I didn't mean anything out of line when I said that. I just was.
No problem. It's all good. We're all here with the same common goal, and I appreciate you all. And have a good day.
Ever since its inception, there's been a hot debate about Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash. The battle lines have been drawn, and both sides have dug themselves into their respective trenches of belief. While there may be no end to this debate, I can at least make one thing clear. Bitcoin Cash is better than Bitcoin at being an electronic currency.
Could it be because of the benefit that Bitcoin Cash has over Bitcoin, such as faster speeds, lower fees? Some Reddit users are starting to notice by saying that the community growth and utility for Bitcoin Cash is on the rise. And Bitcoin Cash transactions have been picking up daily now. Almost 320,000 daily transactions, which is now apparently almost tied to Bitcoin. And also Roger Ver, CEO of Bitcoin.com, the #1 supporter of Bitcoin Cash. He did repost our video, the interview that we did with Mike Novogratz, right here on his Twitter. A quick clip of when we were talking about money being able to be sent as quick as sending a photo.
I always told people blockchain will be successful when we just all look at it like it's the TV, right? Yeah. Do you know how the TV works? Who the F cares what's in the back?
No one cares, yeah.
You just want to turn it on and watch good stuff. So it's all about user interface, make it easy, make it cheap. Once everyone has a wallet, and it's as easy to send money as it is to send
a picture.
Pictures. You're going to see just micro payments, little payments, big payments, all skyrocket. It'll be really interesting.